The folded flag sat on the mantel for 3 weeks before anyone touched it. Captain Elena Voss was declared dead after her reconnaissance helicopter went down over the northern coastline during a routine training exercise. Search teams combed the waters for 6 days. They found wreckage. They found her helmet. They never found her. The Marine Corps held a funeral with an empty casket. Her father, a retired gunnery sergeant named Walter Voss, stood at attention through the entire ceremony without moving a muscle. Her 7-year-old daughter, Hope, stood beside him in a small black dress, holding a photograph of her mother in dress blues, and asked her grandfather a question he could not answer. She asked him when her mother was coming home. Walter had buried friends before. He had folded flags before and handed them to other families and said the words that never meant anything close to enough. But burying his own daughter with no body to bury, no ending to point to, was a different kind of grief. It had no floor to it. He kept the porch light on every night, because Elena used to tease him about leaving it off when she was young and would come home late from training runs in the dark. 3 weeks passed. The house grew quiet, in the way houses do when they are waiting for something they know will not come. On the northern coastline, 400 miles from where the search had been called off, a Navy SEAL team was moving through the same rugged terrain on an unrelated training operation. Their radio man, a young petty officer named Curtis Reyes, was running a routine frequency sweep when a faint pulse cut through the static. It was intermittent, weak, but it was structured, a repeating pattern that no natural signal produces. It was a personal locator beacon, military grade, active. Reyes flagged it to his team leader, a chief named Marcus Ordway, who had spent 14 years learning not to dismiss anything that sounded like a heartbeat in the noise. Ordway pulled the coordinates. They were nowhere near the crash site the official report had logged. They were 11 miles inland, in a stretch of collapsed sea caves that no search team had ever been ordered to check, because no one believed anyone could have reached it alive. The team moved at first light. What they found inside the cave system stopped every one of them cold. Captain Elena Voss was alive. She had survived the crash by a margin she still could not fully explain. Pulled from the wreckage by the current and washed into a submerged cave entrance that opened into a dry upper chamber. She had a fractured leg that had healed wrong from lack of treatment. She had survived on rainwater and shellfish. And every single day, when the tide pulled low enough to expose a narrow ledge, she had crawled to the mouth of the cave and activated her beacon for exactly the 10 minutes her failing battery could spare, knowing the odds of anyone hearing it were close to nothing. She did it anyway, every day, for 21 days. When Ordway found her, she did not ask about rescue helicopters or medical evacuation timelines. Her first words, hoarse and barely audible, were a question about whether anyone had told her daughter she was still trying. The Marines call it never leaving anyone behind. Elena had spent 3 weeks proving she believed in the other half of that promise too. The half that says you never stop trying to come home. The flight back took 11 hours. Walter Voss got the call at 2 in the morning and did not believe it until he heard his daughter's voice on the line, weak but unmistakably hers, telling him to leave the porch light on because she was on her way. When the transport landed, Hope was the first one through the barrier, and no one on the tarmac tried to stop her. Elena went down on one knee, leg brace and all, and caught her daughter mid-stride the way she used to catch her off the porch steps when she was small. Walter stood back and watched, and for the first time in 3 weeks, he let himself cry in front of other people. Not from grief this time, from something that finally had a floor under it again. Elena Voss did not consider herself extraordinary. She said later that she simply refused to accept the version of the story where she stopped trying, even when trying seemed pointless. She kept sending the signal because someone she loved was still listening for it, even if she could not know that for certain. That is the part of this story worth carrying with you. Hope does not always look like certainty. Sometimes it looks like a weak, fading signal sent into the dark for 21 days in a row. Sent by someone who has no proof anyone will ever hear it. Sent simply because giving up was never really an option. If this story moved you, take a moment to like it, leave a comment telling us what stayed with you, and subscribe for more stories about the people who refuse to stop believing someone is still listening.